What does it mean to be an American? This is one of those questions that is discussed on a daily basis. What are the morals that we strive to uphold? What values do we believe in? Some say that being an American means having the utmost pride in your country. Others argue that it means to follow the ideals put forth in the Declaration of Independence: the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All of these definitions are valid, but these are one characteristics all Americans show. It takes part in a list of words that have deeper meaning to all that follow them. These words I am speaking of are civic values, and the specific civic value I am speaking of is courage. Every American displays their courage at different points in their life. Some to simply stand up and speak in front of their class. Others to be out in other countries on the front lines, protecting what is theirs. Although we express it differently, it is something that unites us and brings us together during tough times. Courage, the ability to confront fear, pain, danger, uncertainty, or intimidation. Physical courage is courage in the face of physical pain, hardship, death, or threat of death, while moral courage is the ability to act rightly in the face of popular opposition, shame, scandal, or discouragement. Not only do Americans show courage nowadays, but they showed it years ago too. Throughout history and literature, there are always people and characters that display courage. Some of these people are George Washington, Frederick Douglass, Atticus Finch, and Antonia Shimerda. The first of these four people is George Washington. In September of 1755, Boston was under siege by British troops. Washington was a commander of the American military forces, which were a group of untrained and largely unorganized farmers. And he was ready to make a bold move to recapture Boston, ending the siege. However, there were two problems. The first being that the British forces were powerful and abundant, and the second, an attack on Boston to remove the siege could mean the destruction of the city. But Washington wasn't one to sit around and wait for something to happen. He began petitioning Congress to move troops and began attacking the British at Boston because he knew how strategic and valuable the city would continue to be for the future success of the Revolutionary War. In a letter to the governor of Rhode Island, Washington said, "No danger is to be considered when put in competition with the magnitude of the cause." Washington was facing many dangers: loss of significant lives, loss of his power and authority, loss of his reputation, loss of the city of Boston, loss of supplies, loss of time, effort, loss of the colonies to the British. But he was willing to not consider those dangers when he compared them to the magnitude of the cause: winning independence. His actions, as well as what he wrote to the governor of Rhode Island, follow the direct definition of courage. Frederick Douglass began to show courage when he devised a plan of escape. This plan took years in the making. Every privilege or attempt at appeasing him by his master only strengthened the conviction that he deserved to be free, further igniting his passion for liberty. After his escape and massive demonstration of courage, He began to speak at conventions all around the United States and Europe. He displayed courage during this time as he was still considered property, and his owner could come look for him at any point in time. Any slave owners could also have taken harming Douglas into their hands, but he did not care, as all he sought was freedom for himself and all of his people. Another person that showed courage when going against slavery is Atticus Finch. Atticus Finch decided to defend a slave as if he were a white man. This was seen very badly as it took place in the South, when slaves were seen as being only property and not human beings. Atticus knew what was right, and he knew that the slave he was defending was innocent. So he decided to try to win the case. Any other lawyer would have simply allowed the slave to lose. While preparation for the case was ongoing, people from the town would threaten him and his family. He had to be strong for them, and he also had to have courage to raise his children in a way of thinking that was against the culture of that day. He knew they too would have to face hard times if they stood up for what was right. Finally, Antonia is a girl who suffers all through her life and somehow manages to keep an optimistic outlook. She is one of those rare people who gain character rather than resentment by enduring hardship. Throughout the book, My Antonia, the strength and perseverance of this character shows her courage and determination to get ahead in life. The symbol of freedom, courage, and hardship, the United States, the country that seems to invite all to come and settle, but not without a struggle. Antonia, along with her family, is among the many that takes on this formidable task. A girl with a great heart, she comes to Nebraska virtually helpless. She arrives in an unfamiliar country with knowledge to speak only a few words in the native language, and her family with no knowledge at all. Living in a small hut made of dirt and wood, the Shimerda family is forced to make do with what it has, which is not much. This presents a tremendous strain on them. In contrast to Antonia's remarkable perseverance, misery plagues and inevitably overcomes her father. He eventually gives in and leaves his family to fend for themselves. There's a great sense of unease and apprehension that comes along with the suicide that can be almost unbearable to a little girl. As any child, the loss of a parent is probably the most substantial event in his or her life, and equally difficult to get over. Although Antonia never forgets her father, she uses her strength to move on. Antonia has the courage to face the world on her own, and with the help of one less important person, she knows this courage when she begins to hold a major role in maintaining the family. She goes out to the fields and works like a man, and never once complains. She is not like the other girls that lack courage, but like those few that have an excess. This allows her to stand up to her fears and face the days as they come. As stated before, these four people and characters show the simple civic value of courage. George Washington showed his courage by physical courage because he was threatened by death when he was out with the military. Frederick Douglass faced it both physically and morally. He faced it physically as he was also threatened by death if he were caught, but he wanted that freedom, and it was a price he was willing to pay. He acted morally because he went against scandal and discouragement. He was not discouraged by anything they would say to him, as he knew he was also a human being and had the right. Atticus Finch, as well, went through both physical and moral courage. Physical, because he was threatened by those living around him and in the city that he lived in. And moral, because he acted in the face of popular opposition. And finally, Antonia. She also faced physical courage and moral courage. Physical, as she lost her father, and moral, as she had to go through all the scandal of working in the field like a man. But she did not care. She was strong. These 4 characters have made their mark on the United States and its attitude. Every person that makes up the United States, whether they may be 5 years old or 55, connects to these people.